What's up?
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Awesome. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. I'm a little nervous. I'm not a professional yet, but bear with me.
We'll just talk.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, welcome to your Average Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Woods. You're the very first guest on the very first episode, and I wanted to do that purposefully because I felt like we'd have a great conversation. So, um, yeah, just to I guess give the viewers and listeners a little bit about who you are. I'll let you introduce yourself before I hype you up.
Okay. Well, my name is Tony Holler. I've been I like to introduce myself as I was born a coach's kid. My dad was a head basketball coach at the age of 22 at a really small school. He was also the athletic director and coached two other sports. So he went on to coach 47 years. And I think, being the firstborn son of a guy that just didn't play around with coaching, but actually it defined him as a head basketball coach back in the 60s and 70s, maybe the most recognizable guy in town, and so that's how I grew up. And I went to college to be a doctor. I was pre-med, and it only took about 1 year of college before I called my dad and said, "Who am I kidding?" You know, I want to do what you did. I want to be excited every day, always looking forward to the next thing. So I started off as a basketball coach. I was a head basketball coach at a in a good basketball conference, bigger size school, and that's what I did in the '80s. And then I got flipped. I got fired as head basketball coach in 1990. Same board that fired me begged me to take the track job 1 month prior. And so with four little kids, I became a track coach. I was an assistant coach before that, but now I was a head track coach and I was no longer a basketball coach. And so for the last 35 years, I've been a head track coach at three different schools. And I just retired from, I don't like the word retired. I just resigned as the coach at Plainfield North High School.
Wow. So I guess my first question is, what does being a coach mean to you then?
It's being a teacher. I think teaching is in my blood. I love talking to people who want to know things, which of course, as you know, high school teachers don't always get that. You know,
Yeah.
their students come into class and then they don't even want to be there. But I think that's the challenge of a great teacher is a great teacher will get at least some of those kids to lean in and be interested in what they have to say and more important, what they do in class. And so I see coaching and teaching as the same thing. I think that the difference is that coaching is much more competitive, which if you are a competitor like you and I are, uh, competition stirs our blood and gets us excited. And we're able to look past a lot of the crap that we deal with in coaching because it is such a fun thing to go to battle with your kids, against another team or another 10 teams or whatever. And then the final thing I think is that through your coaching career, there are many kids that that probably aren't headed in the right direction. They're in for a terribly sad life. And through sports, miracles can happen where we change their direction and they
Mhm.
become they redirect themselves to a much happier, more fulfilling life because of being around quality people, which I think sports can do that better than like my chemistry classroom could.
Yeah. Yeah. It's refreshing to hear you say that because one of the first things that I say the very first day of practice is I don't care how good of an athlete you guys are. I really don't. At the end of the day, I want you guys to be outstanding young men because, you know, we're all going to get older one day. your legs aren't going to move as fast. You're not going to be as strong, right? But the character that you have is what's going to take you further in life than anything that, you know, a basketball or your feet or football that it could ever do. So that's super refreshing to hear that you have kind of that same drive as me.
And and what you say is not nearly as important as who you are and what you model. And your staff at Plainfield South, um, every single guy models what kids should want to be someday.
That's
So
awesome.
saying anything at all about, I'm not a big guy on character speeches and things like that. I address things as they come up. I teach as they come up. But I think that kids need to be around people who will lead them in the right direction. We're all copycats. We
Yeah,
cannot help. If we're around bad people, guess what? We'll start stealing and lying and cheating and all that kind of stuff. We're around good people, we adopt the way they are too. So I think that when coaches are of high character, they actually model exactly what their athletes need.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that too. We try to do our best at Plainfield South, and I guess that kind of pivots into the next question is so, now that you're resigned from Plainfield North, we can have an honest conversation, right? Um, how much did you dislike us over on the South Side?
We hated you. Uh, but no. It's so cool. It's so important to understand that when I first got to North, there was this frenzy about North Side versus South Side, or it was like the Civil War, North versus South.
Yeah,
And South was the new building, for those that don't know. Like back in the day, there was only one Plainfield school, and then everything started just growing like hell right after the tornado.
yeah,
And so South was built, and then 6 8 years later, North was built, and um, and so it was just this natural rivalry. And I'll never forget being at South. At my team was at one of those Tuesday meets, and we had good kids, and you guys had good kids, and during the 4x4, one of the McGee boys, the legends, the McGees, who were both 48-second quarter milers, and oh my gosh, they passed us on the backstretch in the 4x4, and my team was giving them hell and probably saying inappropriate things, and he flipped them off in the stands as the 4x4 was going on, and my guys were jumping out of the stand. They're wanting to have a riot or a brawl or something. And I think that moment is when Coach Crow and I, and as you know, we're both very competitive. We developed this idea that we're not going to be like that, that we are going to be respectful competitors. And so it all goes to the fact that, yeah, when we have the hunt invite, our city meet or our city fresh soft meet, I will put in big letters, beat South. I don't care about beating East and Central. That's going to happen no matter what, right? But no disrespect, just fun here. And so I think that it really did become one of those epic but respectful rivalries
yeah,
where you would love to totally embarrass the other team with
yeah.
great performance, but you're not going to trip them to get there.
No,
And 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 you're going to like shake their hand and look them in the eye after you beat them or they beat you. And I think that just teaches people a great way to live.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, like that North versus South rivalry is like unmatched. It's honestly like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like one of those things where it's like you could have no prior knowledge to anything that's happened in the past, but you know that when you step foot in South or you step foot in North, that you don't like the opposite, right? And so, like, I remember the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I told you yesterday, I feel like I have this unique dynamic with you other than
Mhm.
anybody else because you coached not only against me as a coach, but you coached athletes versus me, right? And so I remember 2014, there was a kid named Devin Habrowski, I think his name is, or
Yeah,
Habrowski,
Devon
Devon.
Orlovsky. Yeah.
And I remember seeing this little kid, and he was younger than me, and we used to call him Jaden Smith because he looked like Will Smith's son. And we were like, why the hell is this kid so fast? And like, what the hell is going on? Like, where did this kid come from? And we were talking to him one day, and he goes, "Yeah, the most that we do in practice is like 150s. That's the hardest workout that we've had." And we're like, "What? Like what? Like what are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean you did 150s, right?" And we're like losing our minds, right? And I don't, that's not the start of Feed the Cats, but I feel like that was a big stepping stone for Feed the Cats, which we'll get into more in depth in a second. But yeah, like that whole movement was just like, how the hell are these kids this fast? And it's funny because like on paper we would see kids, and we'd see their times, right? And when they faced us, it was like they just had like this like speed boost. Like it was like no matter what happened, no matter who you had on your roster, when they faced us, it was going to be their best day. And so it was like it was awesome because we both fed off that, and I feel like that really is what pushed Tracktown to become such a big thing, right? That you coined, but that sharpens iron thing kind of made it all go together. So
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
think people understand that we're not kidding when we say that indoor meet that we host, that Fresh Soft City meet, we call the
yeah,
Track Town Fresh Soft City meet, hosted on a 178-meter track, and there's the south, central, east, and north, and and it is one of the best meets you'll ever go to. We have music, we have um, t-shirts, we hand time. We don't have FAT timing, but it is just a war. And
yeah,
then that traveling trophy that you either keep the traveling trophy
yeah,
or you have to, as a team, give it to the other team. The only teams that have ever won that meet, of course, is North and South. And when we had to hand you guys the trophy this year, we had to clap for you and cheer for you. And that might be working at respect, but it's still respect.
yeah,
And we're setting the example for next year when we take that trophy back.
yeah,
That's going to be the situation. And then the actual Tracktown outdoor meet, which is our only co-ed meet, um, our kids just absolutely love that meet.
yeah,
And once again, iron sharpens iron. We have Jeff Purdom at Plainfield Central, who is just a fantastic announcer. Mike Adamson is bringing Plainfield East back alive.
yeah,
They were like legit super fast this year, like they were, like 10 years ago when he
yeah,
coached back then. So yeah, it's just, and that's what makes it fun,
yeah,
is that work that we as coaches have put into making things special for kids.
yeah. And I feel like you spearheaded that a lot. You know, I'm 7 years into coaching now. I was kind of thrown into it. And when you first start, you're finding like your footing, right? So you're looking for information, you're trying to find different sources. And it was such a like a disdain for you because your kids were so damn fast, and you're from the north side, so it's like I don't want to do anything holler, but then I'm like, his kids are so goddamn fast. Like I gotta see what he's doing. What is he doing, right? So I think I watched legit maybe more YouTube from you than I had YouTube in my entire life to find out what the hell you were doing over there. And you make it seem so simple, right? And you do such a good job at that. But your Feed the Cats um, movement and way of training has become more than just like this individualized thing that you do. It's become honestly worldwide, right? And so I've taken so many things from you, and you have no idea. But I try to put my own spin on it, right? And just like you said, it's a copycat league, right? Essentially, like we all do the same things, or we try to find ways to take something from another coach and apply it to what we have, whether that be resources or the athletes that you have or the time or the space. So um yeah, let's talk about Feed the Cats. So um you started it in the 90s, correct? Was the
99. I
99?
say 99. Nothing ever happens like bang, it's more,
Yeah,
it's like during like maybe a 10-month period and around 1999.
got it. And this was after no, this was at the small school, right? This is after
It was
um
Harrisburg High School. Yes.
yes. So like what was the turning point? Because I know that you said that your sprinters had did better than your quarter milers slash 800 runners in the 4x4, and you were like, what's the hell's going on? Like why is this happening? So what was like the turn? What was the defining point that made you be like, I need to make a switch?
There's four small turning points.
Okay.
One was my son Alec, who is now a really good coach at Edwardsville, who they feed the cats better than I do there. If you look, there's no team that can say that they've had a better 10-year stretch than Edwardsville has. I mean,
Yeah.
um, they've had get this 9 times since Alec went there 14 years ago. 9 times they've run the 41s. 9 times in 14 years. It's unbelievable. And they're a school the same size as we are. They're like 23, 2,400. It's there. There's like 70 schools, 75 schools bigger than Plainfield North and Edwardsville. So it's not like they have unfair advantages. So anyway, Alec as an eighth grader could dunk a basketball, and you can imagine if there was an eighth grader at one of your feeder schools that could dunk a basketball, you'd be like, gosh, he's going to be one of
Yeah.
our great ones, right? And
Yeah.
he's a coach's kid, So I mean, man, I'm feeling pretty good. My teams have already won 3 trophies in a state championship. So everything's set up. And he goes, Dad, I'm gonna play baseball in high school because track sucks. Um, and I said, yeah, it does. I mean, it does, but and then I just stopped. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna just stop running. You know, you don't want to run, we won't run anymore. He goes, yeah, right. What are we gonna do? I said, we're just gonna sprint and jump. So so that was one thing. Number two, in 1998, we had I thought by far the best Class A team in the state of Illinois, but we were really good. We were middle distance. We were like 318 small school good in the 4x4, 753 small school good in the 4x8, but it was like 95 degrees for the state meet that year. And so we had to do it 2 days in a row and we kind of
Yeah.
melted, even though we probably outworked every team in the state. We melted, and this group of nothing but jumpers and sprinters, Chicago Leo, upset us.
Mm,
And we walked out with tears in our eyes, not speaking to each other. We're so pissed off with a third place trophy. That was at that point, I thought maybe it's time to become a sprint and jump school instead of a middle distance school. Number three, I saw a guy named Paul Souza, who was the head track coach at Wheaton College, not Illinois, but Massachusetts.
got it.
Never heard of him, never heard of the school, but he owned the room. I was one of like 20 people at a clinic listening to this guy bounce around. Didn't know he high jumped 7'4" at Penn State, so he had a little more cred than I thought he did. And he just talked about how he had a bunch of 47-second non-scholarship 400 guys, and they never ran more than 200 in practice.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, so this is like the beginning of email. And we started emailing each other 2 or 3 times a week. And so he was my first and only mentor. And then the fourth thing, Don Beebe, a famous guy. He's the coach at Aurora
Yeah.
University now. Crazy story. He actually played basketball for my dad at Aurora University when my dad was head basketball coach there. He ended up running a 4.29, in the combine. And, like the fastest white guy of all times or something. Yeah, he had like a 12-year career in the NFL. So anyway,
Yeah.
Don, same time all these things were happening, Don calls me. He got my number from my dad, and he goes, "Hey, I'd like to come down to Harrisburg, Illinois, and run a speed camp." And you can imagine, I'm like, oh, NFL guy wants to come. Oh my. And he goes, 10,000, 10,000 bucks. I go, this is for like a 1 day? Yeah, yeah, 3 hours, 3 hours, 10,000 bucks. I go, well, we can't afford that. And he goes, well, go to the banks. They'll sponsor you, And I'm like, our banks are poor here. I mean, we don't have that. He called me back a couple days later and said, hey, I'll do it for 5,000. And I said, Don, thank you so much. And that was the first summer I ever had a speed camp. I charged kids $20 a head. We had like 25 people. I made like 500 bucks. And we ran 40s and did speed drills. And we wrote them all down. And we gave ribbons for the top times and things like that. So all those things kind of came together because back then, and still even now, there's a lot of coaches that think you cannot coach speed, that speed is genetic. And
Yeah.
I'm like, everything is genetic. Strength is genetic, but we still lift weights and
Yeah.
we still get stronger. We can get people faster. And so all those things came together. And then I thought I had sold out the 4x4. I thought, okay, we're never going to be good in the 4x4 anymore. And uh, and 2 years later, we ran 318 with a skinny generic, like coal mining Harrisburg, Illinois kids that didn't look like they belong running 318. And what I found out was that getting faster is the key in the 400 as well. That getting in shape is not the best way to run a great 400 or 4x4.
And that's I guess a hard pill to swallow for most coaches, right? To look at yourself and say, I need to make a switch, right? And kind of go out on a whim and make a decision like that. So one of my questions is, did you have any pushback? Like, was there anybody, I guess, like above you that was like, that's not gonna work, or you shouldn't do this, or like what kind of obstacles did you have to like overcome?
Yeah, it's weird. I say that track is the stepchild of most athletic departments. It should be a priority because we deal with so many kids and it's such a long sport. It really should be a priority of every athletic department, but it's not. And so I felt like I was working in a vacuum. I felt like I could do whatever I wanted. And not, I think I have charisma and I can sell. I can if I cannot sell something to a 17-year-old, what kind of a salesman am I? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and so and so I sold it well to my kids. I did get called into the athletic director one time, and he goes, How are we paying you to be the head coach? I heard that your practice was over before the girls ended their meeting." And I go, "Well, they shouldn't meet for 40 minutes." I mean, what's wrong with girls' programs where they have 40-minute meetings? Yeah, we were in and out, man.
Yeah,
And not only did we just practice 40 minutes, but nobody worked for more than 65 seconds.
that's
And
crazy.
his head is exploding and said, I don't see how we can pay you a full stipend. And we won the state championship that year. So I mean, like, so yes, it is weird. Once in a while, I will have some pushback. Not very often, though. There's a little bit of boat right stuff, flyers.
Yeah,
His program is from the 70s, and they run a lot of laps and things like that.
yeah,
And because he relies on income from those athletes, he has to explain that his program is better than high school programs or something. And so some of these kids are hearing different messages in the summer than they do in the spring, and that's okay. That's fine. Um, because their times will tell them, what works best.
yeah.
It's when you time stuff, you learn stuff. Um, but I did have my best 400 guy ever in Franklin, Tennessee, who ran a 47.99 in his second meet in April when I first got there. and that was like a 4 second PR for him. And things went really good for him, but at the state meet, um, he wasn't good enough to win it. And because he went so hard, he ended up getting third because somebody else passed him. And the parents didn't speak to me for 6 months. And the dad came in and said, I want my son to work with an AAU coach that he works with in the summer. He doesn't have enough endurance, enough stamina. We're tired of seeing people pass him at the end. And I'm like, it happened one time all year. He goes, well, that was when it counted though.
One
And
time too
and
many. Yeah.
next year he's going to have endurance. And I'm like, that's fine. He still has to come to practice. I don't care what he does, but he can't be doing workouts I don't agree with during our practice time. He'll have to go out and run his 5 miles after practice or whatever, his 2200s or whatever. And the same guy never ran sub 51 in the open four as a senior. Not one time did he run sub 51. So the key to his massive improvement his junior year was his speed. And then there was an overreaction based on one race
Yeah.
to the lack of endurance. So, but those are just things that all coaches have to go through. Where
Yeah.
I had a really good athlete whose dad uh, said that everyone knows, and this is the guy that everybody would recognize his name. But the dad said everyone knows the key to sprinting is stretching, and you guys don't stretch. And I'm like, you're right. We haven't for 25 years. That's because static stretching um, removes 10 to 20% of your explosive power. It makes you feel better, like yoga makes you feel good, but Olympic sprinters are not doing yoga the morning of the 100 meters. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, we want tight, bouncy rubber bands in our body. We don't want elongated, loose muscles. There is a certain amount of elasticity that is removed by static stretching. But for that situation, when I saw the dad out stretching his son at a meet, I didn't say no. We have to put up with some stuff.
Yeah.
If he asks me, is stretching good? I'll say, no, it's really not. For a sprinter, no. Maybe for Tom Brady in his 40s,
Yeah.
to maintain mobility and all. Yeah, good for him. But for somebody running really fast or jumping really high, stretching is not great. But if the parent doesn't ask and feels like they already know, you have to just live with it.
Yeah. You have to appease the parent at that point.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is another obstacle that you have to overcome. And I know that all too well. Right. I actually told my one of my athletes in at our banquet this past season, I appreciated him for trusting me, right? Because it's hard for kids, um, high school students, high school athletes to put their trust in a coach, um, to say, you know what, my parents told me this, or I saw this on Instagram or Twitter, right? Um, and it's hard for them to say, I'm going to trust you, right? And I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket, in hopes that it all works out. Um, and unfortunately, we didn't have the season that we wanted to at the end. But I mean, this kid had a phenomenal season, right? None the least. It just stinks that we had a cold sectional, but he ended up qualifying for state and in the 4x2, and I had to just thank him because I know that that's hard and that's an obstacle that all coaches have to face at some point. But when a kid puts his all into you, right, it just gives you that like extra motivation to like want to succeed as a coach. So
Well, you
totally
know what?
understand that.
We are all reflectors. Like, like if me and you are hanging out with thieves and thugs and cheaters, that's who we become. We've
Yeah.
always taught kids that look around you, look at who you're hanging with. That's who you are because we're reflectors. And then if we're hanging around with, like National Honor Society people who are honest and sincere, that's who we become as well.
Yeah.
So what you as a coach have done is to be somebody that's good to reflect. And when that happens, your kids come to you, trusting you, excited for the workout. Um, if they question the workout, they have the guts to say, "Now, why do we do this?" And if you don't know the answer, then you probably should figure it out,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but we have that honest back and forth, and I think that creates a healthy, I call it an endless feedback loop, where our athletes make us better coaches.
Yeah.
And then when we become better coaches, they become better athletes. And so it all starts working the right way. And you compare that with what I call the feedback of doom. That's where you push kids and they say why, and you say shut up, just do the work. And then they have a bad attitude, and then you let them know that the beatings will continue until the morale improves, and then they're like not showing up at practice, and you become a terrible human being, and that's not what we want, right? We want
Yeah, exactly.
we want that, the reflecting of good things, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's again, it's hard. It's hard. And that's probably one of the toughest things is selling to a kid, right? Your beliefs and your training and but just like you said earlier, if you can't sell it to a 17-year-old, then what kind of salesman are you, right?
Yeah, got to get better, right? Or
Right?
or or stop selling the bad stuff and find stuff that's more, like I always said that I wouldn't mind being a salesman if I was selling something everybody wanted.
Right?
But if I'm going door to door, selling something that people don't even want to hear about, that's a terrible job,
Yeah.
you know. So it's kind of important that we latch on to something that's a positive way of training, an effective way of training, that we can tell stories about how great kids have become by doing this. Um, and then the key thing in my program is that we actually time stuff in practice.
Yeah.
Whereas this is crazy stuff. In the 70s, not one time was I ever timed in a sprint,
Not
except
once.
not once. Never a 40, never a fly, never the only thing we ever did was like when we do like 10 200s, and they'd be like 27, 28, 29, 30, and then we were supposed to report our time or something, and we'd all cheat. I'd run a 29. I'd say 27. The coach said, "You didn't run a 27, Holler." And I said, "Okay, 28." It was a joke. It was a joke. We were never running fast. When we did workouts, it was just hard. We didn't like quantify the workout. Everything we do is gamified. So kids, they sprint fast in practice because we time it and we record it and we rank it and we publish it. And when we do that, you never have to say that was a poor effort,
Yeah. Because the onus is
because
on you now.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
if I'm trying to get you to be a faster guy, um, I'm gonna time you, because if I time you, you're not going to give me a half-ass effort,
Yeah.
you know. So it's important.
And that's one of the big things that I've taken from you recently, is just that. Like I'm going to record everything. Like I'm going to make sure it's accessible to all the students, right? Because like it puts the onus on them and now like they're excited to like compete, right? Like they're ready to go. Like I don't really
Turns
have
it
to come
into
into
a
practice.
game.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
like a
have to come into
game.
practice and beg for them to give me effort. It's like I'm gonna give a max effort because one, I'm gonna see my time instantly. I'm gonna see everybody else's time, and I don't want to be the last one. So, um, yeah,
We
I've
even
taken
do
that from
that.
you.
We do that with our workouts too now. Like, and when you have like we do our 4x4 predictor where we do three 200s, 10-meter run in, start, 4-minute break, and we time it all with three lap. Well, I have those workouts from like the last 10 years. So I can take a freshman and say, hey, last year you were predicting 58 in the 400. Now you're predicting 41 as a sophomore, or 41, 51. Yeah, 51 as a sophomore. Do you understand, how much improvement that is?
Yeah.
And then, do you really think I can run a 51? I go, for sure. This workout doesn't lie, man. You can do it. And so I think we gain motivation when we see improvement. And how do you show improvement if you're not measuring it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's funny how simple that sounds, but as coaches, we forget about things like that, right? And so like the fact that you endorse that and it's a constant, right? I feel like that's why you've been so successful. I feel like that's why you've grown such a huge platform and such a huge audience because you endorse the things that as coaches we should put at the forefront.
Yeah, and that's strange because uh, most of my work now is in football and in lacrosse. And I mean, I've worked with squash players. I'd ask what the hell squash was, you know?
Yeah, I thought that was just a food. What is squash?
It's, squash is okay. This is educational for you, Anthony. So squash is like it's kind of like racquetball. It's like a
Okay.
racket um, played in certain pockets of the world um, and certain pockets of the United States at a very, very high level. And these people are extreme athletes, and they're playing. It's kind of like indoor tennis, except for there's walls and and so I have trained people to become better athletes because these squash players, this is a disease of almost all sports these days, where kids specialize and that's all they do. And so they
Yep.
never gain those skills from other sports. And so they get really good at playing the game they're playing, but they do not become better athletes.
Hmm.
And that's one of our hooks in track, right? Is for that basketball player, football player, track sure won't hurt those kids
No.
because they'll be faster, they'll jump higher, they'll jump further, they'll get stronger, and they'll be bouncier. They will be better athletes, and better athletes make better players.
Yeah.
So yeah, my message has gone pretty much all those places, and the message is really that moderate, hard practices don't get us better. That instead we need some really high level performance level stuff in practice. And we can't do that every day for 3 hours. We
Yeah.
have to shorten our practices. We we have to if we sprint on Monday, we don't sprint on Tuesday. That's we just don't sprint every day.
Yeah.
So and that whole and then also just the valuing of a kid's health. I tell the story that we don't let kids sprint with sore shins. And so sometimes a kid will come in and goes, Coach, my shins, maybe those pogo jumps we were doing yesterday, but they're kind of flared up. I go, okay, you're not practicing today. And then he'll argue with me. Like, Coach, no, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. Because my kids want to practice.
Yeah.
They don't hate practice. And I'm like, no, we're going to take the day off because if we do, your shins will be 100% tomorrow.
Yeah.
Found that to be the truth. And it's so much better to miss a practice and be healthy than to rub some dirt on it, fight through it, and get worse. And
Yeah.
it's funny, there's a coach in Wisconsin sitting in the front row for one of my talks. And he said, Coach, do your kids start to take advantage of you with this? And I laughed. You don't understand my program. Um, my kids don't want to get out of practice. They want to be there. It
Hmm.
is totally unlike what I went through as a middle school, high school, and college track athlete, where practices were awful. It would be a blue sky, sunny day, 68 degrees, and you got that wild spring feeling, and you go, shoot. but I got practice today. My guys are like, hey, it's a beautiful day. What a great day to practice.
Yeah.
So if you're selling a miserable product to kids, you have to almost like force feed them and push them and get mad at them. And that's not the way I like to coach.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think one of the things that I've come to realize um as I've continued my coaching career is like I can't want it more than you, right? And I feel like if these kids aren't excited to come to practice, if they aren't excited to come in and be with their teammates, then it's not going to work. Like it doesn't matter how bad I want the 4x1 to qualify or how bad I want you to break 11 seconds, right? Like if you if you don't want it more than me, it's never going to work. And that's one of the beauties in what you created is like these kids are excited. We see your kids like they're fired up, like they're ready to go,
You
and
know,
you
it's
allow them to
it's
be themselves, and that's awesome.
it's so interesting. I was thinking as you said that, my coaches in the 70s said the same exact thing, that I cannot want it more than you. It has to come from you. That's always been, but here is the difference. Here is the tipping point or the whole feed the cats idea is that if those kids don't want to be great, we used to blame the kid. Now, what I have learned, and this isn't easy, I have learned to look in the mirror.
Hmm.
Say, it's kind of like my son who said that dad track sucks. Well, he's not going to be a good track athlete. So I changed track. I changed what track is because there's some good athletes at South, right? Some of them
Yeah,
aren't even on track, you know.
exactly,
And
exactly.
what if you could get all of those kids to want to run track, and when they showed up, they wanted to perform. Um, so I really think it's the product that we're selling.
Yeah.
Uh, and too many coaches are running those 10-200s and say, trust the process. And me and you just kind of take a deep breath and like, I don't know if that's sellable. You
It's
know,
not. It's not.
especially when it doesn't produce faster times.
Yeah, I remember, going back to that Devon story, like I remember we were doing 8 200s on a Tuesday. And that was like our weekly workout, right? And progressively got faster and we kind of took some reps off as the season went on. But like we're running 8 200s and I'm barely beating this kid and he's running 150s. I'm like, what the hell? Like I'm killing
And
myself and he's flying, right? So it's like,
yeah,
Jesus.
he was a pure cat. He would have quit the team, you know, like when I say pure cat, um, like the family dog wants to please you. Like you can put a leash on the family dog, he'll go out for a 3 mile run. The family cat, you put a leash on the cat and say, "Come on, we're going to go on a 3 mile run."
He's like,
They will lay down and say, "You're going to have to drag me. You're going to
yeah,
have to drag me for 3 miles." And coaches have always thought the cats of the world were lazy. Instead, we need to see them as high performance athletes.
yeah,
That's what cats are. And I used to say, feed the cats. I meant those guys like Devon, twitchy guys that don't want to run a lap, that will compete like crazy. He was one of the best competitors I've ever coached.
man,
Um,
tough. Oh,
and he didn't even run as a senior. He became homeless, and that the whole story could be a book. Yeah, he would have been probably a state champ as a senior, and he ran in one meet the whole year. So,
goodness.
that whole cat thing, I now think that feed the cats is not just for those twitchy pure cats, though. I think that we can take guys that are decent athletes and train them to be more cat-like. How about that kid from New Trier, right? I mean,
Holy cow.
like, did get this when I first started going to the state track meet, like in the 80s, um, the entire finals would be like pretty much all black kids that looked.
Yeah.
Coaches would look at each other and say, "We don't have any of those guys." In other words, they're genetic freaks.
Yeah.
We don't have those kind of, we don't have guys that look like that. Our guys look like, they're like 5'10", 165 pound, with, uh, yeah, they just don't look like athletes.
Yeah.
And, and so here comes this kid from New Trier that, that ran 10, 20 something and 2080. And he looked like one of those kids that we didn't think could ever win a race.
Not even close.
And I, I like one of the things that I will always question. No, I won't question it. That all my work to be an educator and to spread the word about a better way to train, um, I've kind of lost my competitive advantage. That that there are way too many teams now that are training kids like that, right? Um, you understand what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like how you had to run 41.95 to make the finals of the 4x1 this year.
Have you ever seen a year like this? Like,
No,
I,
no,
it was insane.
insane. How
I,
about how about that school of 288 kids? Morrison
Morrison, what the
runs a
126?
126 in prelims, and then Carson Vittorio gets that picture of him like, where is everybody as he's finishing? And then he turns around and they're still like 30 meters behind him. And I'm like, oh, this is nuts. And I mean, they're running elite Illinois 3A times in a school of 288 kids. And then the great part of the story is we're eating at Five Guys in Champaign, and this coach walks in and shows me his medal and said, you helped us with this.
That's
And
awesome.
is the coach from Morrison. And I said, hey, what two guys are the two guys that run 21s? And he's coach, they're both juniors. And so I get a picture of them.
Goodness.
I get a picture with them. And and the coach says, they started watching your YouTube last winter. And then they came to me and say, Coach, we got to change everything. So, I mean, obviously, those guys were going to be fast, even the old way, maybe, but they trained them to be faster.
Yeah.
And that's where I say that I swear to God that the second generation of Feed the Cats coaches are out coaching me now. My sons are out coaching me. The Morrison out coaching. Homewood Flossmore, who won Homewood Flossmore and Everettsville are both Feed the Cat school, obviously. So anyway, I've kind of lost my competitive advantage because I've given away all my secrets. But I'm 66. I'm 66, and I may not coach again. I'm not saying for sure, but I may not coach again. So I don't have to, like toss and turn at night thinking, we'll never win a race again.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it though. Like that's it. There's a great podcast that I watch, Joe Budden podcast, and he talks about music. He's a former rapper, right? And he talks about music. Once you put it in the world, like it's no longer yours. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what Feed the Cats has become. Obviously, you're the founder of it, right? But once you put it out into the world, right, everybody has a chance to grab and cling on to it and modify it and make it their own. And you've created this beautiful thing that now people have been able to use for their teams, right? And so I completely understand what you're saying. Like, you feel like they're out coaching you, but it's honestly part of the game. Like
It
you've
is.
created
It
you've
is.
created something that people have transformed their teams with. So yeah, it feels like
And
that, but it's beauty. It's beautiful.
I think it's helped. I've sold it not as a system or a copy and paste. It's not a recipe. If you want the recipe, I can tell you what we did every day this year. But I think it's more of a way to cook, which allows for proud, egocentric coaches. We're all egocentric. I mean, we all want to be great. You want to be the best sprint coach in the state, and you
Yep.
want South to win state championships in the 4x1 and 4x2. And and that's good. That's healthy. That's being a competitor. And then you shake hands when you get beat. Shake hands after you win. All that kind of good stuff. But I think it's just it's important to say that it's just a way to cook, which allows you to, as you say, adopt it. And maybe you don't do my 3 times 200 workout. Maybe you do 250, 200, 150 workout, which would accomplish the same thing. Matter of fact, it may be better. And then you work with your own algorithm as to what the prediction would be. And you're not doing it for the prediction. This is really a key thing. You're not doing it to predict what the kid's 4x4 split will be, even though it does a good job doing that. Instead, you're doing it to gamify. By doing that, kids want to run harder.
Yeah.
If you ran 3 untimed 200s, it wouldn't be very good.
Yeah.
This wouldn't be.
Yeah. And again, you've done a great job of essentially changing track. Like, and like, tell me about that. Like, how does that feel? I know you're a modest guy, right? And we've had conversations, and your outlook on life is amazing. But like, smell your own flowers for a second, right? Like, how does that feel to know that you've changed track for at least a foreseeable future, right? Until somebody else maybe comes up with, feed the dinosaurs or something, right? They go back in time where we're like, we're gonna start running 500s again, and right? Like, but like,
Right.
how does that feel to know that you've changed track, right? Like, well, you changed sports now because you have other teams and other programs adopting what you've created. Like, how does that feel?
Well, it's, I don't think it, I think it's indescribable how you feel. Um, I'm not comparing myself to Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs never intended to create the iPhone. It was just his work, like so I never set out to change the track and field world or the lacrosse world or anything like that. And I never people think I'm a master branding person, marketer. And it was never meant to be, even though I have my own merch and stuff now. It just kind of happened. So to me, I just think it fortifies my teacher's heart. That um, the hardest thing about teaching chemistry was that no matter how good I was, some of the kids didn't want to be there. Um, and I think sports are a little different. I think we can get almost 100% buy-in. Um, because they don't have to be there. It's
Yeah,
voluntary. Whereas like in school, you have to be in class.
yeah,
Like, oh, you can be in honors chemistry or chemistry, but you better be in chemistry or you're not
yeah,
graduating. So I think that I just fell in love with being able to what I say coach coaches. It's my favorite thing in the world because coaches are the best learners in the world. That when they go to a clinic, they want to learn everything. And
yeah,
and so I fell in love with that. And I think that's really cool. But then the unexpected um, cool stuff is, there's that saying that when old men plant trees that they will never sit under. Um, that's a cool thing. I think I've planted some trees, and so and I'm 66, and so I still have some good years left. And even if I don't coach, um, I have several teams that I will live vicariously through. Like there will never be a meet that I don't check how your 4x1 4x2 does. And Plainfield North and my son Quinn at Andrew, my son Alec at Edwardsville, and then the Morrison and Salt Fork, who were feeding the cats back in the day or a few years ago and winning state championships. And so yeah, it's just allowed me to to stay in contact. Even if I never coach again, I'm able to live on through that. I get to sit in the shade of my own tree that I planted, so
that's
to speak.
awesome.
And that's a cool thing.
That's awesome. I've never even heard that expression. That's amazing. Um, And again, thank you so much for giving me the time, being my first guest on the podcast. Um, I know that we have to wrap it up pretty soon, but I would like to end it off on some quick hitters. All right. So I'm going to
Yep.
ask 5 questions. Um, and yeah, fire away. So, one, favorite coaching moment of all time.
Um, Strangely, not a track moment. I had a team that was sub 500 in basketball, but we were short and slow, and we did a lot of things right. So we went up to Centralia, played in front of a packed house and a beautiful trout gymnasium up there, just a gorgeous gym. And we were playing against the number 12 team in the state. And I had a kid named Chris Hamilton that made a 60-foot shot on the buzzer to tie it. And then in overtime, I had a 5'11" forward tip a ball in to win it.
Wow.
And um, and I literally, I don't know why, but I just dove onto my chest onto the floor when it happened. And I think I did a somersault getting up and like was sprinting around the floor with my hands and thank God it was back in the 80s where people didn't have phones to record it because it would have gone viral and people would have known me for being the idiot that over celebrated. But no,
Would have been nice TikTok.
that was probably, and I remember my dad was a coach, and I remember we stopped at a Wendy's on the way home, and I called him from the payphone and told him, So yeah, it's moments like that, and sometimes it's weird moments. The track moment in 2012 when Derek Suss went down with a hamstring pull and broke his arm in the finals of the 4x4 and we were good enough to win it. We were in third and on the third leg, and um, my Marquise Flowers and Quest Young ran over to pick him up, and he said, "No, I got this." And he finished.
Wow.
And so I tell people I still have the video. The video is incredible, and I tell people that we set the record that day for being the slowest 4x4 of all times. It was something like 5 minutes and 48 seconds or something. Um, but we finished and we got ninth place and we were all state with four seniors. So sometimes there's wild celebrations for great moments, and sometimes there's like tears of sad joy or something. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, as you know, we coach for the moments,
Yeah.
right?
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome though. Um, and I do remember running against those two guys. I was a freshman. Um, and yeah, I want to say 2 or 3 years older than me. Yeah, those are some good teams you had back then. Um, one athlete you wish you could have coached any sport.
It's it's weird. The first one that popped in my head was Kamari Montgomery. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, that was
what a
another good
job.
one.
What a job John Piero did with him. John was a football coach, throws guy, and he coached Kamari totally feed the cats, totally 100% feed the cats. But as soon as I thought Kamari, uh, if you ask John, was he easy to coach? And John would say, no, not really. And sometimes I had to drag him along, like you really need this. So no matter how easy in comparison Feed the Cats is with the traditional approach, there's still some hard stuff we have to do.
Yeah,
That third 200 after running two of them really fast, there's nothing that can prepare you for the pain and suffering
no,
that that creates. And I
no,
don't care how good a shape you're in. And but no, Kamari was just such a legend.
yeah,
But I got a chance to coach Marcellus. So,
yeah.
that's a once in a lifetime thing too.
It's insane. It's insane. Just the athletes that Plainfield has produced just in Plainfield. Like I ran against Kamari, and he would do this like where he would like exhale, and it was like if you heard that, it's like you knew that he was on your ass. It was like, oh Jesus Christ, like just get this race over with. It's just astonishing. Just those two specifically, Plainfield products.
Yeah.
So Wow. Um, Favorite non-track hobby? I think I already know this answer, but
Very, very boring. I kind of like three R words: reading, writing, and running. Um, um, I read a lot, and I want to read more. And I don't just read sports books. I just finished a book called "The Splendid and the Vile," by a story of Churchill in the early war years, and so I love reading, and uh, writing my book has almost ruined my love of writing. I haven't touched my book in 8 months, but I'm going to try to take another week off maybe, and I'm going to get that damn thing published. It's
nice.
basically done. It's basically done, um, but the editor changed a lot of things, and I want to change a lot of things back and redo the beginning. So writing is important. And then, you know, I, I had the terrible accident about, let's see, about 45 days ago where I tore my quad tendon, and I aged about 20 years in a month. I mean, like, um, I had a running streak of 1,025 consecutive days. Now, I'm not to the level of Jason Crow. I mean, he runs more in one night than I run in like a month.
He's a
Um,
madman.
he's a madman. I am more of a sane runner. And and so yeah, for me to count something as a run, I have to run at least a mile. But I ran in 1,025 consecutive days. And when I stumbled off that 5-inch step in my garage, I swear to God, two things popped in my head before I hit the ground. Just ruptured my quad tendon. I knew what it was before I hit the ground, and my streak is over. So the doctor thinks it'll be 12 to 18 months to run again if I ever run again. I have an aggressive PT girl who I'm seeing in about an hour, who thinks that it will be a lot faster, and I'm wanting to run again by September. I'm not going to win any races, but I want to get this leg going again. I haven't been able to drive in 45 days.
Oh
I
my
haven't been able to
goodness.
fly in 45 days. Um, yeah, and I hadn't been injured for 45 years. Since being an athlete, I have not been injured in 45 years. So I'm this softy, that just, that has had life, like on a silver platter for 45 years. And now I'm a cripple, and I'm a handicapped guy, and so, yeah, that's the thing I miss the most.
Yeah. Fingers crossed on a speedy recovery. September
Thank
is
you.
September is very
Aggressive,
aggressive. Very
aggressive.
aggressive. Fingers crossed though. Best advice you've ever received. It doesn't have to be in coaching, just in life in general.
Uh, uh, maybe, maybe my dad, who used to say, pay it forward a lot. Um, that, I don't know about you, but sometimes kids go to like the state meet, they have no money, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you hand them $40, and you go, hey, pay it forward. And then I was like, do you know what that means? And the kid this year said, does it mean pay you back? I go, no, back is like the opposite of forward, man. Like, so here I am, trying to teach these kids some stuff. But pay it forward is a beautiful thing because it goes back to, like, if old men plant shade trees for the next generation, how do how's the next generation paying back? That guy's
Yeah.
dead. No, you pay it back by paying it forward.
Yep.
You leave the campsite better than you found it. You I love the saying I heard just the other day. If you are in a position to help and you won't, you shouldn't be in that position. You know,
Agreed.
I don't think that's religious. I just think it's human that
Yeah.
that if there's if your neighbor needs help and you have the resources to help him and you don't do it, you shouldn't have those resources.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that if your eyes are open and stuff, there's things out there every day that are important to say and learn and repeat and all those things.
that's awesome. That's great advice. Um, and then the last thing before I get you out of here, um, now that you're retired or resigned, what do you plan on doing with your extra time?
Um, there's some saying there's some where like your work will expand to fill your time. Um, so I'm reading more. I'm going to finish my book.
Finish the book.
I'm rehabbing my knee. Um, and I love to travel. Like just last weekend, I got to go to a very small school, Eastland High School, Northwest Illinois. And I got to do three presentations to their entire staff on Friday night, three on Saturday morning. And I stayed in a cheap hotel. I didn't know that Lanark, Illinois would have a hotel. Like doors open to the outside and stuff. It was like in a different world. But I love to travel. I love meeting people. Funny story. Me and my assistant coach, who had to drive for me because I can't drive yet, we stopped at a barbecue place in Dixon, Illinois,
Okay.
and and uh, and the bartender slash server or whatever comes up and goes, "Are you Tony Holler?" I I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I've watched all your YouTube videos." And my assistant, Dawson Piper, is like looking at me like, God, this is getting so old. Like you're walking into barbecue places 2 hours away from home, and the bartender, is watch all your videos. So yeah, I think there's still content creation ahead of me, um, and the travel. I'm traveling to Monmouth University in New Jersey in late July to do a thing. Um, and those things keep popping up, and that's how I get to go places, and kind of have it paid for. That's nice.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are getting old. Like in our upper 60s, we're going on a Viking cruise to Alaska in July.
Nice. Nice.
So those are things that we couldn't even dream of affording back when we had four kids, and a car that always needed repairs and all those.
Yeah.
Life is hard when you're young as a teacher.
Yeah. Just accepted my first teaching job at North. So yeah, I understand that completely.
That could be a podcast for. I have told so many people that if I was Ross Draper, there wouldn't be a discussion. There'd be like you're changing colors, your shirt color, and you're working for us now. And oh yeah, you can still go back south and coach with Coach Crow and those guys, but as a non-tenured teacher, you realize you can be dismissed without cause. And
Yeah.
and I mean, this is a tribute to you. This isn't being mean to you. But as the principal of Plainfield North, I would play hardball with you because I'm the principal at North. I'm not the principal at South. And if I have one
Yeah.
of the best coaches in Tracktown teaching classes in my
Yeah.
school, oh man, we're going to do a hard sell on you.
I appreciate that. And I've had some discussions about how I want to navigate those hardball talks. So
I
so I can
I
keep this color.
I would just love to hear what Coach Crow coach you say, right? Or Marcus?
They're asking me daily, hey, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? And
Oh, that's funny.
I'm
That's
like,
so funny.
guys, I haven't had any conversations. I'm here until I'm not.
That's that is the politics of District 202 track and field right there.
Yeah, I'm getting into the thick of it, but it's fun. It's fun though.
Well, especially, I don't know if you know this, but I had a really good staff 2 years ago. And the key thing is I had Andy Dirks as my distance coach who was in the building and was well connected.
Yeah.
I've coached now for 6 years where I'm not the chemistry teacher anymore. And it's looking back, it's been a hard 6 years. I've had to rely on my captains more than ever and Andy Dirks. and a staff that didn't change much. But we just had random reasons why all four of my coaches had to resign. Um, Amazing guys. And so I hired four rookies this year who came in, and I could not ask for a better job from first year coaches than those guys gave me. And now they're all gone. So literally, they are replacing all five boys coaches
Yeah,
at
that's a
Plainfield North
lot.
next year. That's a lot, and that's why I would play hardball with you. And I don't care what you want to do, Anthony.
I,
We are going to do what's best for the Tigers.
I told Draper in the interview process for the teaching gig, I told him I was like, in full transparency, I'm not qualified to be a head coach. I'm not, and I don't know if he believes me or not, but I try to be as honest as possible. But that's a lot though. That's a lot. And whoever that next coach is has big shoes to fill. But it's a hot commodity for sure. It's a very desirable coaching gig for sure.
Yeah,
But
I don't think it's possible that our distance crew next year will be the best distance crew in the history of the state. We return nine of our top 10 guys from a team that got second in the state the last 2 years. Um, just an amazing distance group. And I'm walking away from that. I mean, they could be so good. And our fresh off 4x2 team almost broke the conference record, ran 132. That's a really fast, fresh, soft time. Sam Appia, is I think the best freshman
yeah,
in the conference. We have We're going to have three vaulters that are pushing 14 feet next year. Um, we have good young throwers. So I think whoever comes in, doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. But whoever comes in better find, some assistant coaches that like work in the building and are, because I think that if you don't work in the school, you're probably a temporary coach.
yeah. Unfortunately, yeah,
Unfortunately, yeah, it's
yeah.
it's hard. Now Marcus doesn't work in the school, does he?
No, I think that the it's funny that the coaching staff at South, half of us have been alumni. So I think that's been like our saving grace is that we kind of have that connection in the building, although we don't work in the building. Um,
Yeah.
and we've Marcus is going into his 20th year. He graduated
Yes.
in '04 and he's never left.
Yes.
Um, I graduated in 14 and I went away to college for a year and then ended up coming back and coaching the following year. So I've been around for going on 15 years, uh, really 20 years, almost just being around the school. So yeah,
And
I think
I
that's been
think
our
that,
saving grace.
don't you think that as I get older, especially when I went through these tumultuous restaffing situations, which to tell you the truth, that's one of the reasons why I had to leave is because I could not face replacing four coaches again next fall.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. That's
blocks
a
out the
lot.
sun. It's hard. And there's no way I would get as lucky as I got this year. So I'm probably going to have a couple of guys that I wish I wouldn't have hired if I hired them next year. So
Yeah.
but I'm starting to think that one of the keys to having a great program like South has is to attract assistant coaches and have them be as loyal as you guys are to Jason. Um, from the outside looking in, um, you guys are like a cult or something, man.
Uh,
Like, like he is like the supreme leader, and and there's just so much respect. And I think you guys bleed blue, and
yeah.
you're so emotional about your program and your loyalty to Crow and the program itself that I think that's a hack because teams that don't
Yeah.
have that end up replacing their assistants every year.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys have a guy like Marcus going 20th year and being a non-teacher, and that I respect Marcus for that, and respect Jason for that.
Yeah. Jason, I still call him coach, but yeah, Coach Crow is a fearless leader, and he he demands a lot out of us, but I think that again, iron sharpens iron, and he's made us better men. And I feel like that's why we've all been so connected for so long. And I think that's one of the reasons why I ended up coming back. He's the guy that really, makes this thing work. And he's built such a great program and culture. And yeah, there's nothing better.
Yep. Yeah, I just have nothing but respect. But I'll always in my head, maybe on my tombstone someday, I'll put beat South.
It's only right. It's only right. I appreciate you so much. Um, I'll definitely be talking to you. I'm hoping that you'll take me in as your mentoree, and you'll mentor me, and hopefully I can continue to pick your brain. And um, yeah, you just have so much so much wealth of knowledge that I feel like I can continue to grasp from you. And yeah, thanks for being the first guest on the podcast. And good luck with your recovery. September, September,
September jogging.
September.
Jog a 12-minute mile in September.
There you go. And then
That's slow.
hey, that's faster than me right now. So and enjoy your Viking cruise next month. And yeah, again, thank you so much. And this was the first episode of Your Average Coach Podcast. And you are no average coach. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
You too. Have a good one. Yo.
I mean, be ready to be blown away.
Your Average Coach Podcast. Tune in, baby.